I'll start. There we go. So you can already get comfortable, and we'll sit in a quiet, comfortable position for our meditation to begin. And then we can have a look at what's going on. What the heck is going on? I wish I could tell you. So just enjoy a moment of breathing in your body. Feel your body. It helps if you can feel whatever the base of your body is touching. Gives you a feeling of presence and grounding. And so as you sit or rest in whatever position you're in, become aware of the rhythm of your own breathing. So without changing your breath, just noticing the breath. And so this full moon, which is approaching overnight tomorrow, is also Yom Kippur, which is a Jewish high holiday. And for anyone who celebrates that, then I wish you all the blessings. And Yom Kippur is known in the Jewish tradition as a moment of forgiveness, a moment of reconnecting. And this is very, very needed in these times. And then in the Hindu tradition, this starts a 2-week period, which is known as Pitru Paksha. And this Pitru is the ancestry, so distant family lineage. And that includes our parents, but it also includes relatives and people we would never have known. And so this is a period also where we can honor generations of ancestors going back into distant time, all of whom, without exception, will have known difficulties, all of whom, without exception, somehow overcame those difficulties, which is why we're here today. And so you can bring your awareness to your heart as we sit here and perhaps hold an image of one or another particular favorite relative or someone who's significant for you. And otherwise, you can just hold a generalized sense of being connected back through the eons, through generations who have somehow overcome difficulties and challenges in their own way and allowed you to be born in this time. Gently bring your hands together in front of your heart and feel your heart beating. Om Shri Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Saraswataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurupyo Namaha. Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavati Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we each be protected. May what we do here together bring mutual benefit and be mutually uplifting. And let there not be any difficulties or obstacles or anger between us. And especially may what we do here together bring peace and harmony to those around us. Just release your hands as you like. And bring your awareness back to your physical body. And sense the back of the body. Bring all of your awareness to the back body. and sense the energy behind you. And notice that part of that is you. There's an energetic expression of yourself extending beyond the skin that you can still feel behind you. Certainly part of your awareness rests in that energetic field. And the same at the sides of the body, the arms, the sides of the torso, the legs, feeling the skin, and then the energy emanating from the sides. And the front of the body. And especially as you sense the energy at the front of the body, you'll probably notice that you can pick up on energy more easily in one or another place. Just notice that for yourself. And if you find it difficult to sense that, don't worry. You can visualize it. But otherwise, see if you can have a sensual experience of your own energy. Notice the energy of the heart, for example. And even as you're breathing, you might like to breathe as if you started the breath in the heart itself. Inhaling directly into the heart, exhaling from the heart. And see if doing that allows you to expand that energy. And with the same fullness of breath, bring your awareness down to the navel center. And you might imagine that you're breathing in there now, without straining, without forcing it. If it feels strange, don't bother. And just feel yourself inhaling as if you're inhaling through the navel. Exhaling as if you're exhaling through that same spot. Going deeper inside, releasing any tension that might prevent you from relaxing into your breath. This might be in the guts themselves, the intestines. Soften the intestines. Soften the stomach. And soften the heart. And the throat. And the tongue. Keep scanning your physical body to allow it to soften each time you breathe. So there's nothing preventing you from breathing fully. And bring the awareness to the base of the body, whatever you're sitting on, resting on. And feel that there's points of contact that are clearly identifiable. Perhaps stronger sensations in one part of the body than the other. See if you can feel what's happening in your feet, your legs, the base of the body. And here too, we can see if we can sense the energy that you're emanating. Sensing the extension of yourself. and sense it as a connection with the earth itself, even if you're in an apartment high up off the ground. Sense your energy connected to the earth. You might like to visualize roots stabilizing you, grounding you. And perhaps the sense of contact with the roots or with the base of the body can give you a feeling of stability. And with that feeling of stability, you can expand through the rest of the body. And you might find that your breath as well is easier, more expansive. Going to the opposite end of the body, coming to the crown of the head, the scalp itself, feeling the skin at the top of your head. Relax the forehead, relax the temples, the scalp, the neck, and then sense the energy emanating from the top of your head, your own emanation from the crown. And sense that above that, there's an energy that seems to be calling, drawing you upwards, like a magnetic sensation. Perhaps that allows you to sit more upright, give you more space. Grounded beneath the body, solid, connected to the earth, and growing tall and upright through the crown of the head and above. And I'd like to invite you to bring your hands to your navel center. You could place both of them there or just one. And cradle your abdomen. Cradle the navel itself. This precious hara, this area of life force in you. Everything starts at the navel. Every movement that you do. And of course, life itself for our physical bodies, starting from the umbilicus, connecting us to our mother's placenta, cozy and safe in the womb of our mother, who in turn has her own navel, which we rested beside for 9 months, more or less. And your mother's navel connected her to the placenta inside her mother's womb, your grandmother, right next to the navel that connected her to her mother, and so on, and so on, in an unbroken chain. And we can feel our mother in us. And of course, we can feel our father in us, because without the father, there would be no life. And if you can visualize this unbroken chain from the umbilicus to the navel, to the placenta, to the womb, to the navel, to the umbilicus, to the placenta, to the womb, to the navel, and on and on and on, through hundreds, perhaps thousands of generations, if we could imagine going back in time. And feel that we're also a product of that. Nothing separates us from the experience of our ancestors. We might be even regretting the experience of our ancestors or angry about it, perhaps angry with them for something that they may have done or not done that we don't agree with. And at this period, especially, we practice forgiveness. We practice letting that go. And practice compassion, which allows us to see that we're also carrying generations and generations of trauma, hardship, and difficulty. And yet we're here in this moment, awakening our own sense of what it is to live and experience difficulties. If you'd like, you can shift one of your hands to your heart and keeping the other one on your navel. And sense as you inhale from the heart into your hand at the navel. And as you exhale, exhaling from the hand, resting on the navel in the direction of the heart. And growing as you breathe each time with every inhalation, expanding compassion, expanding our understanding for what our ancestors, known and unknown, have gone through. And we continue to expand our awareness to all ancestral beings, whether they be related to us physiologically or culturally, or just through our shared humanity. And we breathe in compassion through the heart, expanding our compassion each time we inhale. And as we sense that trauma is unavoidable, what the Buddha described as suffering, dukkha, we sense that this is also our nature, that suffering is not to be avoided, not to be denied or disliked or hated. It is a part of our life, regardless of the time that we live in. And when we understand this nature of suffering, we understand also how to take care of ourselves. And in taking care of ourselves, we can take care of the suffering of our ancestors as well. And as we inhale this compassion, we recognize that events are happening that are out of our control, or perhaps even the result of actions that we've taken. And yet we can change our attitude in the face of whatever event is arising and not get drawn into drama or emotionality. And we can see that through so many generations of people being separated by pestilence and war, natural disasters, all kinds of unexpected disasters befalling our ancestors. And we have the good fortune to have this awareness that shows us that we can take care of ourselves by changing our attitude to what's happening, that we can't escape whatever suffering is there in the community or in the world around us, but we can change our attitude to it. And by developing compassion for ourselves, we feel instantly compassion for all beings. And in the practice of compassion, we find our solace. We find everything we need to manage, to move through whatever pain and difficulty and trauma is in our surroundings. Release your hands and bring the palms together in front of your heart. We feel the energy of this full moon that's approaching. Feel the energy of healing, the energy of merging back into the ocean of oneness from this idea of singularity, this idea of being separate. And we recognize that it's impossible to be alone. It's impossible to be separate. We never have been, and we never will be. And so by taking care of ourselves, we take care of all beings around us, whether they be physically present or at a distance or no longer in their bodies. Om Chandraya Namaha. Salutations to the moon, luminous in the sky. Om Som Somaya Namaha. Salutations to the quality of the moon, the Soma, which is the quality that is inherent in ourselves through our emotions, our awareness, and our connection to the past. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That is perfection. This is perfection. When you take perfection from perfection, perfection remains. Gently rub your hands, create some heat. And when you're ready, cover your eyes with your palms, keeping the fingers on the top of your head and the palms directly in front of your eyes and let the warmth and the energy from the center of your palms radiate into your eyes, nourishing the eyes. And when you feel ready, blink inside your hands, get used to the light, and then lower your hands. So welcome back. And hello, Jyoti, nice to see you. So if the others want to put the videos on, you're welcome to do so. And I think what I'll do is I will share my screen, if that works. And we will have a look at the, so I won't give you all those bits. Oops, hang on. Wait, how does that work? Oh, I guess I can't do that. All right, well, you'll see the technical bits as well, so don't worry about the overload of information. So I do hope you can see this screen. It says that you can, but now I've got great distrust of technology these days. And if you have any questions, you can just unmute yourself. It's easier for me than reading in the chat. So this full moon technically is on Tuesday, but it's just in the early hours of the morning. So it's about 2 a.m., 1:54 a.m. in Brussels. And it's nicer. I could have done it on Tuesday evening, but I prefer to catch the moon when it's waxing, when we do these kinds of things. The ideal is that it's the same day, or at least the waxing phase, because then ideally you can work with the energy for the days ahead as well. Otherwise, it's kind of like recent history. Anyway, so this moon is in Pisces, and of course, a full moon is an opposition between the sun and the moon. And so then we find the sun in the opposite sign of Virgo, and that's at 28 degrees. Now, maybe what I'll do is I will just remove this chart for a moment so we don't have too much going on here. And so we see the moon up here at 28 and a bit of Pisces. So that's in the next to last degree, the penultimate degree of Pisces, which is also the penultimate degree of the zodiac. And then we have the sun in opposition down here in Virgo. Don't worry too much about the rising sign, but if you are in Brussels, it's interesting from that point of view that this does match what would apply in terms of our Brussels experience, at least. And the ascendant is here at 28 and change of Cancer, which bizarrely enough almost identically reflects my chart, my own natal chart. And the moon happens to be on a degree away from my natal Mercury as well. I won't give you too much more detail, but it strikes me as interesting when things like this land on specific points in a chart. It's always interesting to see what's happening. And so when we see this opposition here, we're seeing that the axis between Pisces and Virgo is predominant. That's what we're looking at when we see the full moon. And so that already tells us a little bit about the story of the theme of the full moon. And that axis of Pisces and Virgo is very much about healing, both from the physical aspects, like the Virgo side of things, particularly the more physical healing through medicine, for example, or through service, through practices that we can do, through actually taking action, cultivating good habits, and then also the spiritual healing or the more emotional healing that represents Pisces. And that is also very much about a kind of a contrast between our relationship to this material embodied world and our relationship to this more ethereal world of spirit, or you could call it just imagination as well. Pisces is very imaginative, very creative, but it's also the sign of the very, very end, symbolically, of the zodiac, which is where everything merges back into the one. So we have this beginning at the Aries point, at the very beginning of the zodiac, which is spring at 0 degrees of Aries. And then we have this ending, which is the 30th or the last degree of Pisces. And so this moon is really telling a story about something that is about to end. And what's interesting in the next couple of days after, well, actually, it's only one day really after the moon, is that we have this ingress, which maybe I can find again. There we go. This ingress of the sun into Leo, which is then going to change everything suddenly. There's going to be a complete shift for where, don't worry about the houses again, where the sun was then at the last part of Virgo, it's now going to be in the very beginning of Libra. And that then, sorry, let me go back to this moon so we can, that gives us a kind of an ending that is also quickly followed by something new. And so there can be themes in your life that this resonates with, a kind of a sense of needing to stop something or needing to change something radically and looking forward to something quite fresh and new. And the emphasis of the new is also there because we have Mars, which is in a pretty close enough, it's not a tight conjunction, but a close enough conjunction that it's activating this energy of the sun. And pretty much all this week, we're going to have Mars and the sun together, which is anyway an action kind of energy. And this also means that in some way, this is the rebirth of Mars, because Mars, every time a planet encounters the sun in conjunction, then that's like the birth of a new cycle for that planet. And so now, along with this full moon, which is kind of a completion and an ending of a cycle that's happening really at the end of something that is almost, in a way, there's no point in retrieving it, no point in fixing it. It's time to move on from it. And then at this same time, we have this story of regeneration and change and movement towards something new. And in that cycle of Mars, it's a new 2-year cycle. So this is always something really interesting to pay attention to. So this cycle of rebirth that we see in Mars in the sign of Leo will show up at some point in your chart, wherever Leo is. So it's interesting. Sorry, I say Leo, in Libra. And so it's in the sign of Libra, which is going to be also where we see the equinox. So when the sun moves into 0 degrees of Libra, which I can show you here by just going day by day, when the sun moves into 0 degrees of Libra, as you see here, then it becomes the beginning of the autumn. And that's going to happen on the 22nd. So don't just ignore the dates here because that's not exact. It's already happened before this indicator. So that will happen on the 22nd. And that again, so it's showing over a very quick, brief point of time. So we've got, so from Tuesday overnight, Monday to Tuesday, and into, let's say, very, very early Wednesday, we have these 2 days of a big shift in energy. And the story with Pisces is also very interesting because we also see, hang on, just to clarify things, I'll just move that. We also see that Neptune is close to Pisces. It's close to the moon in Pisces. It's not a very strong conjunction. It's 7 degrees, but it's still interesting because it also affects so many other things. It's a very slow moving planet. And we see that Neptune is also in relationship to Jupiter, for example, and then also famous Pluto, which is causing us quite a lot of, in a way, confusion and big changes socially. So those are planets that tend to reflect what's going on socially as well. But the Neptune moon conjunction can be very pleasant. It can be very spiritual. That is something that we've actually already experienced this weekend, because over the weekend, the moon shifted across Neptune. So even last night, you would have experienced this energy, this morning, and so on. And you may not have had an opportunity to sit down and contemplate these things now, but perhaps overnight, tonight, tomorrow, and the next 2 days, say up until Wednesday, would be a really nice time to reflect on how you would like to regenerate something, how you would like to say goodbye to something. And with Neptune there, it's a very strong message of compassion, of um, of love, of universal love, and spirituality. And it also has a shadow side. So we're going to talk about the shadow a little bit tonight. Every placement, every planet has a shadow side. Just as it represents humanity, we all have our shadow side. And so the shadow side of Neptune is really switching off and escapism, and it's more about delusion and not really seeing clearly, and things being perhaps a little bit too good to be true, and being credulous, not believing too easily what's happening. And so with the moon there, that can also affect our emotions, but in terms of our general population, when we look at a chart from a mundane perspective, meaning the worldly perspective of what's going on socially, the moon represents the people. And so here we can also see that there is some kind of factor of delusional behavior, or at least at the very best, we could say confusion, and not being able to really discern what's going on, but potentially also really getting drawn into something that is not quite what it seems. And so there's always this risk, of course, in human relationships. We're always communicating in ways that we don't necessarily understand each other, clearly. But this is very significant because the power of Pluto and the power of Mercury are combining to make this kind of a triad, let's say, that is adding to this confusion. So this energy of a square between Mercury and Pluto is challenging thinking. It's challenging our beliefs and thoughts and how we communicate. That can be in a very positive way. It can be about wanting to really get to the bottom of something, really deeply understand something. And that can, of course, be our personal situation. We're not having to talk about conspiracy theories here. It's not about that kind of thing, although it could also be that. But it's really very much about trying to find what is real, what is going on in terms of how we're understanding what's being told to us, or what we're experiencing through what we think and what we might believe. And this is something that we're going to be grappling with, of course, for a couple of years to come, because this energy is like that currently. We've had 3 years or more now of real disturbance in terms of clarity, in terms of not really being able to be sure what we're actually grappling with. And the next few months coming, up until sort of January, February, perhaps even February to be sure, we're going to have a lot of that in quite an intense way, where things are shifting and changing and not much clarity there. And the other thing that Neptune represents is illness, strange illnesses and pandemics. So Neptune can represent, for example, the plague, or this kind of pandemic that we're in right now. Anything that is hard to pin down, Neptune will represent in terms of something that might act against the public. And so, of course, this is probably, again, a reference to what we're experiencing right now, which is that even if we think for a moment that we've got it, we understood what's going on, and we're kind of sure we can plan with something, then things shift again. And it's kind of like whack-a-mole. There's one mole jumping out of the hole, and then another one, and then another one, and you're never quite able to catch them all. And so the best way to work with this, especially right now in these next couple of weeks, but I think really until the spring, well, actually, let's be honest, I think until probably 2025, but let's say for sure up until the spring, is to be extremely flexible and to plan with the sense that your plans may not work out, and having a sense of absolute go with the flow, being in harmony. And what's important to understand about the idea of going with the flow is that it doesn't mean not taking action or not caring about what's happening or not engaging in some way with what's happening. It means being present. So when you're present, you're going with this moment to moment engagement with what is real, what's happening in your life. And you're not either pushing against it, nor are you trying to micromanage or overly control what's going on. And so that go with the flow energy is very much this kind of Piscean energy, where there's a lot of shape shifting, a potential to be very Pisces is a mutable sign. That mutability means changeability because it's a reference to the changing seasons, but that mutability is built into this full moon, for example. And that means that right now we're in this period of morphing, that we're not maybe even sure what it is that's changing, but somehow we know we need to change something. And that clarity of what needs to be changed or how we might need to do it will emerge in the days ahead of us. And certainly will emerge quite strongly as we move into a more fixed energy, which we're going to do in the beginning of the year, in mid-January, when the nodes change sign and they move from Gemini, and which is another mutable sign, off the Gemini and Sagittarius axis, and they will move into the Taurus energy. And so that's the axis of Taurus and Scorpio, which is fixed energy, which makes things much more, dare I say, reliable, perhaps even more tangible. And so I think we do have another few months ahead to try and work our way through what is going on, not really being clear, having plans go awry and needing to make new plans, and just having a sense that that's okay. And equally having a sense, especially from that point of view of healing, or wanting to guide oneself through life. One of the things with the Virgo energy is that there can be this tendency also to want to control things and make it look a certain way, out of a desire for things to be better, out of a desire for things to be reflecting an ideal. But that can lead to a lot of control that is actually preventing change, preventing things connecting and moving on. And so that flow can also be extrapolated into how you grow personally. So having a sense that your personal growth, your spiritual growth, your life plans, none of it is linear. It's just not possible that it should be. Even if we hold on to this hope that it's like, okay, well, now at this age I shall have accumulated this, and then by this age I shall, know this and do this and be that. And if we can let go of that and just relax a little bit more, relax into our own growth and relax into our own sense of who am I just in this moment, and how am I engaging in my life? Am I okay with that? Am I content with that? Or is there some kind of delusion or illusion or lack of clarity, or perhaps even a sense of am I actually avoiding engaging at all? Because especially with the moon and that energy of Neptune so close together, then we do have this potential for escapism. That the Pisces energy can be like that, and the Neptune energy is extremely like that. So try to use that for more self-compassion, more creativity and self-expression, and working through your life in such a way that you're responding to life rather than trying to grab it by the horns and guide it somewhere. And I think you'll find that then when you make plans, you can have much more of a sense of course correction, so that you're, again, it's not that you're not engaging, it's not that you're letting everything go and not participating, but rather you're just responding in real time to what needs to be done, making plans and being okay with those plans potentially needing to change. And of course, we can say, you know, with certainty that, for example, that could apply to travel plans, or how you might work, for example, physically, where do you actually do your work, or where can we connect with each other socially. And I do think that that through the course of this winter, that it's going to shift at least one more time before we're really out of the confusion of this pandemic. So we may end up with new revised situations that we have to deal with over the course of the winter. I think, though, things will improve immensely already when the nodes change. So pretty much in January, I think it's the 13th of January. And then from that point on, we've got a year and a half of a very, very different energy. And I'll touch on that when we come up to, perhaps I'll talk about that in November, when there's going to be an eclipse, in fact, on the 19th. So what to say? The motivation that we had, or perhaps still do, that especially kind of started off this period of Virgo, which would have been like the last week of August, more or less. That is kind of flagging right now, and so it's also kind of normal as well that you might feel a little bit tired, or that you might feel a little bit just, again, lacking a compass. And this Mars energy that's here at the Sun can be used in some way to guide us through that kind of uncertainty. But at the same time, when Mars is conjunct the Sun, it can make us extremely hot-headed and easily frustrated. Mars and Sun is two very hot planets. It's very much about action and dynamism, which can be invigorating, but it also can be impulsiveness and not really knowing why we're doing what we're doing, but jumping in anyway. And so it's a good week to practice restraint in terms of speech, for example, and especially because Mars is in its detriment. It's not in a good space in Libra. It's in fall, actually. Technically, it's not in a good place because it prefers to be across the way in Aries, where it rules. And Libra is very much an opposite energy to Mars. Mars is about independence and doing things spontaneously and taking action. And Libra is about working together with others. It's about relationship, about fairness and justice. And Mars in that Aries energy doesn't really care about those things. It's pioneering. It's about starting something. It's about initiating energy. And although Libra is also an initiating energy in its own way, because it's also cardinal sign, starting out the seasons, as all of them do, the Libra initiation is really to connect. It's initiating connection. It's initiating relationship, for example. So Mars in Libra is not very comfortable. And when Mars is in Libra, we can end up with this kind of sense of not being able to act according to how we want to act and having to compromise a lot for other people. And this also, especially in a birth chart, shows a potential for being passive aggressive, for example. Mars does not like to be wishy-washy and doesn't like to have to go through all this diplomacy and stuff like Libra stands for, because Libra is ruled by Venus. And Venus is all about connection and relationship and beauty and harmony. And Mars is just like, let's get on with it. And so that energy is not really working so well for Mars. And then you might find people not acting in a coherent way, or acting in a way that might be a little bit oblique and not terribly easy to grasp. But there's another interesting aspect to this, which is that Venus herself is in Mars's sign, Mars's other sign of Scorpio. So here we have Mars in Venus's sign of Libra, and we have Venus in Mars's sign of Scorpio. And this in astrology is what we call a mutual exchange. And that mutual exchange continues for another few weeks. It continues for till the end of the month, I think it is. When Mars enters Scorpio, it'll be the end of October, and Venus is, no, so let's say until the 7th of October. So it's really only 3 more weeks, but okay. So let's say for 3 more weeks, we have this energy where Mars and Venus are sharing, or kind of like doing a home swap, and kind of looking after each other's domains. So both of them are uncomfortable, and both of them are trying to adjust. Venus in Scorpio doesn't really function so well because Venus is about simplicity and beauty and ease in life, and in appreciation of things, in abundance of even decadent things in Taurus. And Venus in Scorpio is a little bit uncomfortable because Scorpio is all about the kind of taboo things. It's what's hidden and what might be even considered like gossipy, or this energy that is not really conducive to connection. It can be deeply sexual, deeply erotic energy as well, on a purely personal or relationship type energy. But when we look at that on a more global scale, or on a more sort of social scale, we see Venus in Scorpio is not easy. It's too intense for Venus. Venus wants to be light and taking everybody else's considerations to heart. And Venus in Scorpio is very, very intense and wants to get into the dirt and the nitty gritty. So both of these planets are in an unusual position at the time of this full moon, and they will continue to be so for the next 3 weeks. This doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It just means that things, again, the message is that things are not really easy or comfortable. Things don't really flow in a way that they would if both of these planets were in their home signs. So definitely in November, when Mars moves into Scorpio, Mars will be happier, but by then Venus will have moved on and she'll be kind of neutral, let's say, for the next couple of months. This energy of the full moon also has an interesting signature with Chiron, which is opposing Mars. It's going to be even more so at the ingress of Libra. So when the sun moves into Libra on Wednesday, and then Mars and Chiron will be in a stronger opposition. When we see the ingress into the sign, that starts the season. So when, for example, Aries, when the sun moves into Aries, that starts the spring. When the sun moves into Cancer, that starts the summer. And when the sun moves into Libra, it starts the autumn. And then finally, when the sun moves into Capricorn at the winter solstice, that's when the winter begins. And so here, that energy of starting, doing something is there on Wednesday. This shift in energy into Libra is not just a change of overall energy for us now, but it's also a new phase that we're entering into for 3 months. And so we're at this equilibrium stage of the year, the equinox coming up. It's the equal night and day, and that equinox energy is also kind of in this energy of the full moon. So we have this shifting where the moon is leaving, moving off something. The full moon anyway is about endings and completions and something coming to a culmination, something that's fulfilled its promise, in this case from February, from the new moon, and or perhaps it was early March from the new moon of Pisces. And then we're really quickly spinning into something that's going to be very different, and moving into this cardinal energy, which is very much about initiation energy. So thinking in terms of what you'd like to do for your life, go into that sense of what is it that is my burning desire? What is it that I really want to start or initiate at this time? And consider how it is that you might like to change, let go of something that you know really needs to change. And even if that's only metaphorically, or even if it's an emotional letting go, or it can be symbolic letting go, and it can also be an actual letting go where you really decide, okay, from this point on now, I'm moving on. I'm leaving this relationship, or I'm leaving this this project that I don't want to deal with anymore. or this could be about, moving or finding a new place to live or something like that. And the action doesn't have to happen this week. It's more of a sense of shifting your attitude towards that. So this is a really interesting week where we have a lot of energy of dropping something and moving on really fast, dropping something and starting a new, in a very short space of time. So if you work with this consciously from your intentions and from what it is that you'd like to see, you could really sort of accelerate change in the direction that you want it to go, keeping in mind that we're still going with the flow and not sure of the outcome. And then I think you'll find that in November, when there is this this partial lunar eclipse that's on the 19th of November, that's another energy of change that is going to stimulate a lot. It's going to be happening in the axis of Taurus and Scorpio. And so we'll look for those houses as well in your chart. And then finally, at the very end of the year, the last eclipse, which is the solar eclipse, is on the 4th of December. And that is still in the Gemini Sagittarius axis. And that is where now you could start already from this point, thinking about what it is that you'd like to change that may not take effect for another 3 or 4 months, or even going well into the spring, because things won't necessarily change immediately. But that axis of Gemini and Sagittarius in the chart is going to be affected very strongly by this. It's a total solar eclipse on the 4th of December. And so where you may want to make some changes in that area, that would be the time. And that would certainly be also a correspondence with things that are coming up that might have already been there since last May, meaning May of 2020. Things that are coming up that that really need to be finished up, that need to be moved on from. If we do it consciously, we can sort of guide the energy the way we want it, and at the very least, we can manage our expectations and manage our sense of our attitude around it, and our sense of whether this is livable or unlivable, how much I need to participate or let it go, for example. Yeah, so busy week ahead in a very sort of strange way. The other aspect that is not exact again, so none of these aside from the full moon aspect, none of these aspects are really exact, with a couple of exceptions that I've already pointed out. But then we also have Venus, who is, as I mentioned, in Scorpio, who is also opposing Uranus, which is in Taurus, and it's been in Taurus for the last 2.5 years, or no, I guess 3 years already. It went into initially in May of 2018, and then came out in November of 2018, and then went in for good in May of 2019. And so 19, 20, 21, we're almost at 3 years all told, and it will remain there until 2025. And Uranus moves so slowly, and currently it's retrograde, and so it's crossing this point of an opposition with Venus. And this can also instigate some sudden change of relationship or energy of sudden shift in a relationship. Venus also represents money. This can be something triggering money for you as well. But again, you want to know where it's happening in your chart. So where is Taurus and where is Scorpio, to have a sense of where that might be affecting you in life. And the closer it is to the degree, so these numbers that you see here, the degrees of each of the planets where they're found, the closer it is to something that you already have in the chart, and especially personal planets like the sun and the moon and Mars and Venus and Mercury and Jupiter, and to a lesser extent Saturn, and then the outer planets. When those planets are triggered by something, then you really sit up and notice. And also equally the things like the ascendant point or the midheaven point of your chart. Those things will be very personal to you. Otherwise, it's just going to be perhaps a random chance, or it might be something that just has you shifting gears a little bit in terms of your own sense of relationship. But it's very interesting because, again, the message is Uranus is about something new and different and unexpected and unpredictable. And it's shifting in that energy of Venus, which is relationship energy, particularly. And then that brings us back to what we already saw here in Libra, which is quite highlighted now this week, because not only is Mars there, and then the solar ingress coming there, but we also have had Mercury there for already a couple of weeks. And so Mercury is on the 26th of September. Mercury will station retrograde. So you get a lot of social media hype about Mercury stationing retrograde. It's, again, if it doesn't affect you personally, it's much less of a big deal. But it is worth noting when it does station retrograde, because it slows down over the course of a couple of days and then appears to go backwards in the sky. It's an apparent motion. It's not actually happening. But from the Earth's perspective, it seems like Mercury is moving backwards. And that happens for roughly 21 days. And so while Mercury is moving backwards, it's going to get all the way back to almost where Mars is at the ingress of the Sun into Libra, which is, I'm going to move this forward so we can see things at that point. And so when Mars is moving into that that point along with the Sun, let's push it back here, the Mercury is going to go almost to that same point. So it's very interesting for you this week in general to pay attention to what is going on in your life that is governed by Libra. And whatever's happening around this last sort of 10 days of the month, 10 days of September, is somehow going to be recalled through October, or find a resolution in October when Mercury goes direct again. And Mercury is not really out of this whole story until the end of October. And so it's always interesting to note, if you do like to follow things like this, just note what's going on in your life, events that might need attention, or situations that are coming up. And if there's something that's difficult to resolve, consider waiting, and certainly don't try this week up until the well, let's say try before, if you need to resolve something, try before Thursday, before the 24th, and leave it then for the weekend, let's say into the following weekend. If it's something that you've already been working on, you might spontaneously have a resolution for it. And otherwise, it's probably better if you can postpone decisions. It's better not to engage in initiating something specifically, like a new project or something around the time that Mercury stations. So let's say between 25, 26, 27 of September, it would be best if you could just avoid that period. And then if you do have to do something and start something, plan a margin where you might have more time for revisions, more time for examining. Try not to set a fixed deadline, not a hard stop at the end of a date, and just say, we try to move towards this date, and there might be something that comes up that we need to check again, because Mercury retrograde does tend to bring with it some crossed wires or misunderstandings, or also it can be things like not really reading the fine print and being unpleasantly surprised by what you discover if there's been a contract or other agreement that you've made. But you should not certainly stop life for that reason. It's just that it's good to notice these things, and particularly if you have a strong Libra energy, it's very helpful at this time, because Mercury is going to be in your sign for a very, very long time. This is going to be several weeks that you will enjoy Mercury. So already it's been there for 3 weeks, and it's 3 more weeks to go. I think it's no, even more, because it doesn't really leave until Yeah, November 5th. So you've got quite a while to go. So if you've got a strong Libra energy in your chart for any reason, perhaps you have your sun or your rising sign or your moon there, or a lot of planets otherwise in Libra, then this is worth taking note because that tends to affect you more personally, more directly. Let's see what else there is. Let me come back to, I'll get rid of this guy. Yeah. All right, so here we are. Let me just see if I've covered everything that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, and so between Jupiter and Pluto, we have what's called a semi-sextile. And so this is an interesting development as well. So much in the same way that, for example, Jupiter is connecting with Mercury. I'm not sure, I can't remember if I mentioned that, but let me go over that again to be sure. So Jupiter, when it's in this trine, which is a flowing and harmonious energy with Mercury, can be very creative, very expansive for ideas and conversations and so on. And again, remember, this is active this week, it's active now. And you can use this energy constructively that way. But Jupiter Mercury can also be too much thinking, too much communicating, too much busyness, too many words, too much, social media. And so beware of that, because Jupiter will expand whatever is there. As I mentioned earlier about the Venus in Scorpio and the Mars not really super happy in Libra. So issues around relationships, issues around misunderstandings are already a tendency now. So better to avoid anything like gossip or complaining, or really count to 10, take lots of deep breaths before saying something to somebody, or write a draft before sending an email, or write a or don't send the email, and just see if things can let it go. Again, going with the flow and seeing what happens, rather than always trying to stay on top and take action. So so it can be a very harmonious energy if you're using that constructively, and it gives you that opportunity as well to be very constructive, but it can also expand in the other direction. So again, it depends a little bit your natural tendency and what you're already motivated by. And the other thing is, and then so that brings us to this connection with Pluto. So this strong connection with Pluto and Jupiter is a story that's happening all the way since the end of 2019. So it's a very old situation that we're still being triggered in. And so this triggering of this energy between Jupiter and Pluto is also very much about trying to expand our understanding of things, getting to the bottom of things. Pluto is also about transformation, and it's about perhaps opportunities to really get to the bottom of something, and to find an optimism for change, or finding an expanding into something that can lead to a lot of change. And then if we look again at so when you see the air signs are all affected here, we now see Saturn at 7 degrees is also in a trine with Mars. And so that's going to be even stronger as we go through the week, as Mars moves ahead again. When we go Saturn at 7 degrees going retrograde, and Mars now on the 26th. So that is going to be the day that Mercury stations retrograde. We have Saturn that is trining Mars, and that is an energy of, again, intensity. It can be a great energy for getting things done, can be really productive, but it can also be provocative. And so a lot of the tendencies that we've been seeing in the news, which are rebellious energies of issues around social controls, issues around a kind of a sense of being overwhelmed with rules and government regulations and heavy-handedness, and just a sense of unfairness in society might be exacerbated around this time. And so this can also be potentially a time of that energy flaring up and triggering some kind of news. So again, pay attention to what's going on in your life, and then in the world around us. So a lot of, just to summarize a lot of these things, that's a lot of this energy is exposing us to a need to understand something better, to try and overcome what is not that clear. And that also very much in terms of shadow energy. So Venus in Scorpio, Scorpio is typically shadow energy anyway. We can see that shadow side of Scorpio is all the aspects of secretive behavior. Scorpio loves secrets, but also tends to be somehow embroiled in things that go on behind the scenes. And so there's a lot of different aspects in the current energy which talk a lot about this need to understand the shadow. So we can take that in every layer of our understanding, meaning the shadow of our society, the shadow of power, the shadow side of collective behavior, mob behavior, for example, the shadow side of communication, especially in this case where Jupiter is going to expand potential communication with this potential also for misunderstanding or even deliberately creating confusion and delusion around us. And so there is a real moment here where we can explore our shadow side and try to understand our machinations and how we actually how we operate. And the thing about our shadow is that it's mostly hidden from us and other people see it. So it's not like it's a shadow that is our secret and nobody knows. It's mostly that we don't see what's going on. And so it's about us trying to shine a light on our own behavior, because most other people around, at least if they're relatively aware, are aware of how we operate, and they see that side of us, whether it be a manipulative tendency or whether it be a tendency to deceive or a tendency to be unreliable or whatever. There's a million ways the shadow can express itself, but it's worth it this week to really slow down and notice, this is my tendency. And especially because there's such an emphasis on relationship, it's like, what do I want to do with this? And then the next layer is our social situation. What do I want to do with this as a contribution to the world that's going on around me? So especially with Mars this week connecting with the Sun, we will have potential flare-ups and socially potentially some interactions with people that might cause us to feel frustrated or that we might regret. So impulsive behavior should be minimized as much as possible. If that's a tendency of yours, then lock yourself in, take your phone away. Because it will tend to lead to excess. It will tend to cause some kind of disruption, particularly with this kind of energy. So you won't get away with it this week for sure. And you might regret it, and you'll have to deal with it later, especially after Mercury goes back over the same territory, because when Mercury goes retrograde, it's going to cover all this space that is demonstrating what's going on right now. Whatever that flare-up might have been, it's going to have to come back to you for remodeling. And that might even happen 2 more times, because if it goes backwards and then forwards again over the same issue, then you'll have literally 3 opportunities to try and deal with it, which you may or may not want to do. So let me see what else. I wrote some notes to be sure I remembered stuff. I did mention this business of kind of relaxing into our own situation, relax into your own growth. And I really do mean that. I think it's a time socially and in our humanity and in the history of our globe, as it were, where without a doubt things are very intense, and we're going down a path that is almost unstoppable, that will take us into suffering. Now, there's no way that we can know what that's going to look like. But even if we manage to course correct and repair some of the damage that's been done for decades or even centuries, we still have this ahead of us. And so when you, especially with Pisces energy, you want to go as big as possible in terms of understanding your role in life, going big in terms of understanding that this is a never ending game, that this body and this particular life that we're in, this particular appearance that we have, is just a temporary thing. It's a temporary blip, and there's an aspect of ourselves, there's an aspect of oneself which is permanent, and it's that aspect that we need to put more attention on, taking our attention off our little stories and our little sufferings and our little miseries and all of the drama that we create around day-to-day stuff, and put the attention on the bigger picture. You get really, really deep into understanding the deeper values that you have, and what it is that you could consider you're here for. And I don't mean that on an everyday level. I mean that in a bigger scheme of things. What do you want to leave behind when inevitably you leave this body? How do you want to change this world while you have this short moment here? And there's of course loads of ways to express yourself and to do things like that, but we want to think in these bigger, vaster terms, longer terms than just our short life. So what can we do right now with this little life that we have that will perpetuate beyond our life? Planting a garden, for example, that comes to mind, but it's not just that. So this relaxing is again not a message to not do anything. It's about recognizing that all the stressors, all the things that we tend to get upset about, are really short term, really not important things. And that's something that you can already this week start to contemplate. How can I relax around pressurizing myself to be a particular way? Or how can I relax around my vision of growth, or my vision of advancing through life in the way that I wanted it? And can I allow myself to feel just what's in the moment, what's necessary for me in this moment? So so that's a message that I really want to leave you with. So changing incrementally is the best way. When you change and grow incrementally, you're responsive. So if something is, if you've got a fixed target and it has to look like this, you might bypass something that could be really wonderful. You might bypass something that could really support you. And if you change and you think in terms of smaller baby steps, little more nuance in the way that you're seeing your own progress, and recognizing, yeah, I've learned so much, I've done so much, even if on the outside nothing shows up, then you also have this capacity to be more responsive, and you can change direction, change course as you need to, because we're going to need to change course frequently in the years and decades ahead. So we need to be flexible. We need to be really responsive in terms of how we live our life. So these are challenging times, and there's no way around that. But it's also, I think, the legacy of life in human form. There's no way to be human without suffering. And I know that message, that is the Buddhist message, often disturbs people, because people don't like to think of suffering. But when we don't think of suffering, that's when the shadow emerges. That's when we project onto others, or we push down emotions, or we push down our own genuine experience and feelings, and try to pretend things are different. And so when we can actually acknowledge that there is suffering and that life entails suffering, we're even literally born in suffering, from the squeezing through the birth canal, or the shock of cold air on the skin after being in the perfect temperature in the mother's womb. It's suffering. And this is the nature of our humanity. And so when we can connect to that not in a morbid way, not in a way that is like focused on the suffering, but connect to this fact that this is a bigger story than just my little life, just my little situation, my complaints. They pale in comparison to what our ancestors have done to actually get us to this point. And so we also owe it to whatever the generations are to come, that we owe it to them, that we try our best to overcome, to to heal ourselves already, so we're not at least projecting into the future more suffering than is already going to be there, because in a way it's again, only being able to do the best that we can with what we know and the tools that we have. But this week certainly triggers that. It certainly is a good start, and I think we'll have another interesting fresh energy that comes through October. Very, very different to what we've been experiencing now. So maybe I'll leave it there. I think I've said all the bits that I wanted to, more or less, in my notes. And if you have any questions, then you can ask. Maybe I'll stop sharing the screen.
So this is Jyoti. I just have a curious question. The Buddha behind you, is that a medicine Buddha?
No, this is actually Avalokiteshvara.
Okay.
So Avalokiteshvara is the Buddha of compassion.
Yes.
And so he is the manifestation of compassion. And that's my practice. So the Buddha said also, if you can master one practice, if you focus on compassion, you've understood all of the practices. And this is because it's complete. And of course, it's also an expression of how everything is interconnected and how we can't really take anything away. But that's the practice. And you have a medicine Buddha, I think.
Yes, it's a medicine Buddha.
Right. Yeah. And so you can also, for example, focus on that one practice, whichever, empathy or healing or whatever resonates with you, and you focus on that one practice. Absolutely. How in this moment can I bring healing, for example? How in this moment can I heal myself? And what in this moment can I help heal? Which doesn't mean interfere with other people's stuff. We want to go and fix often, and this is not what that means. I'm just giving the idea that it's, you can use that as your practice that guides you in every moment, even without having to know all of the other stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So thanks, Maria. You're going to bed. All right. Are there any other questions?
If they're not, I have another question.
Sure.
I have a birthday on the full moon, 22nd.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I can really feel the pull between, the axis you were talking about, Pisces and Virgo. While in my work, I'm doing all my passion and purpose projects, which I'll be proud of when, I'm no more. It just feels very lonely, and it's taken me away from meditation and, companionship. And it just feels like, I know this is important work to do, but why do I have to do it alone?
Yeah, yeah.
And why is there no rest?
Rest. This is a very important word, actually. I didn't really use that rest, but that's kind of what I meant with relaxing a little bit and going with the flow. It's this healing axis. It's very significant to have a birthday when there's these significant lunations, when it's like right on the same day as a moon. What it suggests is that this is a year of completions coming up for you, because the moon is always about culminations, sort of crowning the end of something, and completions or endings or the fulfillment of work or the fulfillment of a promise or something. And so this year ahead, your birthday year ahead, till your next birthday, is going to have that theme. And in fact, what I've just been describing is in many ways your birthday sort of prediction for the year, because that's what we call the solar return. And so you have this intense energy there, which is speaking to that, all of the complexities of finding this balance in relationship and finding this balance between our spiritual side and our material side, and to what extent, especially Virgo, wants to be of service, be healing and be of service. And Virgo can tend to overserve, partly from a desire to want, because it's part of your nature to want to serve, but also in the sense that there can be a sense that things are wrong and need fixing, or that things need to be done in a particular way, which can actually be exhausting. And then there's the Pisces end of this coming from the moon, which is more of that. This is very interesting. That axis is also the victim and martyr axis. So the martyring energy of Virgo and the victim energy of Pisces are activated at this full moon as well. And again, that's where the shadow exploration comes in. When we don't like to use these words because we don't like to see ourselves in this way. But the shadow side of our behavior is the really helpful thing to understand. Oh, so that's me being a victim, or that's me being a martyr, and not allowing myself the beauty of life, not allowing myself to be in relationship, not allowing myself a day off.
That's exactly how I'm feeling.
Yeah. And so we have to say, okay, at some point along the way, I've allowed this to happen. At some point along the way, I stepped into that role, and then everybody bought into me being in that role. And the sort of Shakespearean tragedy of the whole thing is that you do the role really well, because it's inherent to a Virgo energy to want to be there, to want to serve, to want to look after others, and to make sure everything's right, to clean up after the party. Everybody else gets the party, you clean up. And that's where you want to then stop and question. And the Pisces moon then calls and says, well, what about your spiritual side? What about creativity? And what about having fun and just switching off and doing something really nice?
I'm feeling all of that all this month.
Yeah. So this is more than just now for you. This is significant that it's your birthday, because that's all of your work for the next year. So again, you don't have to figure it out by Wednesday. You have this period of time where it's now like, okay, I see myself on the precipice of change. So if you extrapolate this week into a whole period of a year, you have this knowing of the ending is imminent, something has to change, something has to give, and a sense of wanting to jump, and you will be jumping into something new and being different, because it's there. It's in the energy of the week itself around your birthday, which is imprinting itself on your solar return. And so this is it's a great time to really step back and say, where am I causing my suffering? Where can I pull myself back so that I have more energy to alleviate suffering in myself and others? And where do I want to continue doing certain things in the rest of my life? Where am I happy to invest wholeheartedly without needing to play the role of martyr? And still being able to embrace all aspects of my life, having whatever relationships that I want to, flourishing, as well as having the work that I have. And of course, it's true that things happen in waves. It's very helpful to remember that we can't grow in every domain of our life simultaneously. We might be more intensely occupied with work in one time or one moment of our lives, and then the next moment is family, or then it's a relationship or something like, or health or whatever. And to try and expand everything all the time is not going to work. So then the question would then become, well, what am I willing to sacrifice and let go of in terms of the work and the commitment that I have for my work, so that I can allow other things to flourish? because you're on the precipice of moving into the Libra energy, which is all about relationship. So to what extent you can make that grow, but with the energy, stepping back a little bit from what you've been doing all up until this point. These aren't easy choices. It's just that once you have this inner knowing that you're saying, you're resonating, and you feel this energy very strongly in you, it's difficult to ignore it without becoming out of balance, without really becoming ill. And then the body starts to demand that something stops. And when we don't treat the shadow, when we don't understand our shadow behavior, that might even come from like childhood patterns and things like that, what will happen is the body becomes the excuse to stop, where we can't say no because we don't want to let others down, or we don't feel the courage to let others down, or may not even be letting them down, just saying no. Then the body will figure out a way, and then you have to deal with something more complicated. And so that's definitely where you don't want to go. And the Virgo Pisces axis, as I mentioned in the beginning, is anyway to do with health and healing. And so you owe it to yourself to stay on top of all of that, so you can be this channel for other people, the energetic guide or channel for other people to be well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good luck this year. It'll be a big year. Mm-hmm.
Susan, can I ask a question?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I've actually just had a relationship breakup a week ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. We were only together 6 months, but it was quite intense. And yeah, I ended it because it didn't feel right, really. Mm-hmm. And listening to your readings tonight, I just was really struck by the sense of how relevant it is to me because of an ending and potential new chapter. And it's just really interesting me as you were talking and answering the question just there about my shadow and my part in this, and how my kind of childhood aspects appear. So things like fear of abandonment and appeared, in the last month of this relationship, and actually wasn't the reason I ended it, but that was definitely present. And I just wonder about the new chapter going forward, whether that's finding a new relationship or a new relationship with myself, but involves speaking to those difficult places, those difficult aspects, and maybe somehow then, if I was to enter a new relationship, because I think I would like to, I think I'm in the right place to do it, it's just this relationship didn't work out, that I'm in a better place, allowing to be able to do that, and using this new chapter, I suppose, to kind of work through that. So I just really wanted to speak to those ideas, like whether you could speak to those ideas.
Yeah, and I think it's always really important to understand your relationship to yourself before, or at least during a new relationship. Making sense of what went before is as big a component of whatever might come next as whatever might come next. So it's like understanding why you engaged in a particular relationship, or how you engaged in a particular way, or whatever, is going to benefit you both vis-a-vis yourself, because then you'll be able to perhaps be more clear with boundaries if that was the issue, or be more clear with what you really want out of a relationship. And then the next time you enter into a relationship, you're coming from that place of more inner groundedness, inner confidence. And this is the important thing here, this particular time, this month, is not to feel that because there's change, I need to do something now. The change is there, the energy is transforming and changing, but it doesn't require action necessarily right now. And especially this week, there's a lot of impulsive action that will have us regretting potentially in a couple of weeks' time being too hasty. I'm not suggesting you might do this, but just don't go online and start looking for new dates, in this particular energy, because you're going to attract also the energy of this moment, which is a bit chaotic and confused and not clear and not having all the pieces that we, you know, the ducks are not lined up in a nice neat row. And so I do think this energy of relationship is certainly very dominant for the next 6 weeks or so, because the energy in Libra is going to be very strong until the beginning of November, and certainly until the 5th of November. And that can be a really interesting time while Mercury is retrograde, especially these next 3 weeks starting the end of this week. A really interesting time to review all those kinds of things, that you examine, gosh, what was it like as a child when this happened? What was my reaction? And again, coming from that energy of compassion and understanding that whatever we learned to do was always done with the intention of protecting, always done with the intention of looking after ourselves. And it should never be regretted as a mistake. It's the mistake is perpetuating it beyond its, you know, valid time. But
Yeah.
the initial behavior was not wrong. And so there's no shame in it, and there's no regret in that. And recognizing, oh, right, I don't need to do that anymore. Now I can choose differently.
Yeah, it was survival back then, wasn't it? Protection and survival. And now I'm safe and I don't need necessarily to protect the same way as I did back then. Yeah. Yeah, that's really useful. Thank you. And yeah, you've really made me think about just reviewing and taking your time and slowing down and not going into chaos.
Yeah. And also not measuring life and progress in life based on these outer events, like, am I in relationship? Am I not in relationship? You know, is the job right? Is that, you know, all these boxes that we tick are just an outer reflection of how we're growing, and not it's not a certificate of progress. Let's say it's
That's
important
inner work, isn't it?
Yeah. So you have the sense that I am evolving and developing, and even if on the outside the things that I would like to see happen are not here right now, that doesn't change the fact that I'm evolving and moving through life, and I don't need to be a certain age or be in a certain form or have a particular job or any of these things to win life, as it were, you know, to win at life.
Yeah, I understand that totally.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's been really, really useful.
Great. I'm glad you could be here.
Yeah, I've loved the session. It's been really good.
Good. Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah. Hi, Eva.
Hi. First, thank you so much once again. It was very interesting. I do have a small question as well. So I have a stellium in Libra. So, can you just confirm to me what you said about until the 5th of November is related to the retrograde, right? About the
Mercury retrograde. Well, Mercury will then move into Scorpio at that point on the 5th. So so that means that all of this time, already since the beginning of this month, when did Mercury go in? Already since the end of August, Mercury is in Libra. It's a long time. And so this is a period where you're going to have a lot of activity around yourself, around reflection around yourself, activity around yourself, perhaps engaging more with Mercury related issues, which can be also related to business, commerce as well, but communication often, or busyness in travel, especially local travel. So all of that can be very busy, and there's an aspect of it that is going to be would be helpful to be up for renew, you know, to kind of refresh and try and understand yourself and review what's going well, what's not working, and use that as an opportunity to kind of change gears. And you can do it slowly, because you've got now pretty much a month and a half of time where you can really reflect on all the things that we've been seeing tonight. So Mercury stations directly 18th of October, but it doesn't change signs then until the 5th of November. So it stays It'll move back through all of Libra from the 18th of from the 10th degree of Libra all the way till the end, from the 18th until the 5th of November. So it's a lot of time for thinking. And
For
communicating
thinking,
and connecting as well. Communication and connection is also keywords for Mercury.
okay, and not initiating anything.
Pardon me?
And not initiating
Oh, no,
anything.
not necessarily. I don't want to suggest that you shouldn't do anything. It's more that what you do initiate should be quite clear that you really want to go in that direction, and that the people you're doing it with are who they say they are, and the contract that you're engaging with. If there's anything new that comes up, then you need to read, carefully read the details, know what you're getting in for. It's certainly not something that you should avoid. It's just something that you should put more attention on. And actually things can work out really well in Mercury retrograde, because if you're really concentrating and really paying attention, you'll put more energy and effort into doing the right thing. It's a great time, for example, for studying or researching or reading a book, or writing a book rather, or developing a project from the back, like the back end of it. But then ideally kind of only towards the end of October would you then more confidently put it out there. It's not that you shouldn't, especially if it's something ongoing, you could certainly carry on with that. All right. So good luck with that, and happy birthday to all the Libras then out there. And thanks for hanging out for a little while. And I'll send you the recording if you'd like to hear it again. All right.
For the session, it's been great.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
See you next
Good
time.
night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.